Oregon returns both of their defensive ends, but loses both of their defensive tackles. One of whom, Derrick Harmon, was drafted in the first round. Jamaree Caldwell was drafted, I believe, in the top 3 rounds. So that's losing a lot there for Oregon, who for the first time in a while had multiple NFL-level defensive tackles in Derrick Harmon and Jamaree Caldwell. They return Matayo, Uiagalelei, and Teitum Tuoiti, I think is how you say his name, but maybe I'm misremembering it. Very good defensive ends. Both of those are coming back, but there's not a lot of proven production coming in or coming back on the D tackle room. For example, Bear Alexander is projected to be a starting defensive tackle for Oregon, and in his career at USC, he didn't even start for a whole season, ever. And I think maybe he started for most of 2023, but still he was just kind of a good pass rusher and average, below average overall player. And that defense with Grinch was an absolute mess. So there are questions at defensive tackle. There are. And an Oregon fan asked me this question in my Discord server. So I am going to give a plug to my Discord server, of course. Please join it, because anyone can join the Discord server. It's free. Links in the description. Anyone can join it. And if you navigate to the YouTube mailbox channel, you can ask me a question, any question, and it will be turned into a video on Wednesdays when we do our Withdrawal Wednesdays. And since it's early enough in the preseason, any preseason questions you have to ask, they'll probably be answered. So who asked this question? Let me find it. I lost it. It's hard to navigate on your phone and laptop during a live show where I'm my own producer. But anyway, QS Spear, or Q Spear 02. Cool name, by the way. He asks, what do you think is the ceiling for the defensive line? Now, Oregon went 13-1 last year, undefeated in the Big Ten. They were the only team to go undefeated in the regular season, or really even close to it. First in the Big Ten, both in the regular season, and then if you factor in the Big Ten championship game, they were also first. They lost to Ohio State in a huge fashion in the playoffs, but none of those issues in the playoffs for Oregon in the Rose Bowl were due to the D-line. I mean, I saw the stat. This actually shows how good the D-line was. I saw a stat that basically said Derrick Harmon owned Carson Hinsman in the Rose Bowl. Like, he was outplaying him, he was beating him, he was pushing him, he was beating him. Like, Hinsman had a PFF grade in the 50s in that game, and Harmon had a pretty good PFF grade. And Caldwell, I think, did pretty well as well. But then everyone else on Oregon's defense, really outside of the defensive line, whether it's the linebackers taking bad angles, the DBs couldn't cover, Oregon's O-line, I actually think, didn't do all that poorly. But the problem is when your receivers can't get open downfield and your quarterback is short, he needs forever in the pocket, and Ohio State's pass rush was just too good for that, especially with Simon lurking as a spy, and then Ohio State being willing to stack the box, and it worked. This D-line for Oregon last year was a huge part of the reason they won 13 games. I mean, it saved them literally against Wisconsin when they won by 3. It helped them against Ohio State the first time around, where they won the line of scrimmage in that game, huge part because of their D-line against the Ohio State O-line. It helped against Penn State a little bit, more so in pass rush, though, than run defense. But they were able to get some pressure on Aller at times. It was never the problem. The defensive line for Oregon was never, ever the problem. Just wasn't. And they return an All-American, I think, in Matayo Uiagalelei there. Absolutely an All-American. And then they return, I think, an All-Big Ten player on the other side. So you look at that with Oregon, and you got to think you're pretty secure at the end. There's an argument to be made that Oregon will have the best defensive end duo, the best edge duo in the country. There's an argument for that. Whether it's Teitum Tuoiti or Matayo Uiagalelei. They could be the... Matayo Uiagalelei could be the best D-end in football this year. And then him and Tuoiti could make up the best edge duo. That's secure. And then behind them, they have Blake Purchase, highly recruited out of high school. And then they have Elijah Rushing, who almost went to Arizona. Oregon took him. 5-star. The staff is raving about him. I don't think he's going to get on the field and be an All-American immediately or even an All-Big Ten caliber player, but he could be an All-Big Ten caliber player, and I think he'll be in the rotation. And I think Oregon's pass rush on edge will be better this year than it was last year. The question for Oregon, and really the whole D-line's not just ceiling but floor too, is D-tackle. That's the area you have to look at. I know that they only got Bear Alexander in the portal. And the fact that they bring back Amari Washington, who is a rotational player there, backup nose tackle, is good. And I think Amari Washington is an all Big Ten caliber player. I think he's great. However, Bear Alexander, a bit unproven, was not very good at USC. I mean, didn't even crack the rotation all that much in 2024. And then behind both of them are redshirt freshmen, Tioni Gray and Aiden Breland. And Breland is dealing with a little bit of an injury. I love Breland, by the way. I think Breland's going to be a stud. And I think Washington could be that. And if they can fix on and off the field issues with Alexander, talent's never been an issue for him. But the staff definitely took a risk. I mean, Bear Alexander may not pan out. And then to have only one great defensive tackle, when I would say to win it all, you need at least 5 or 6 capable bodies and probably 4, great or good collegiately defensive tackles. That is with rare exception, of course, because there's always exception to the rule. Just wanted to add a necessary asterisk to that comment about winning it all. That'll determine everything right there. I mean, Mari Washington had 4 total tackles last year. Rotated, played in a few, I think more than 100 snaps, but rotational player. Bear Alexander last year only had 3 solo tackles, 1 QB hurry, and then in 2023 he had 1.5 sacks, 3 QB hurries, 6.5 TFLs, and talent's never been an issue for him, but there's a reason he didn't crack the rotation all that much. Clearly, unless you think that Eric Henderson and D'Anton Lynn are idiots, which they're not because they fielded one of the best Lincoln Riley defenses ever with none of the talent that Riley had on defense at Oklahoma, not even close. So when I look at Oregon's defensive line, I think to myself that it is a unit with, I'll say it right now, they have a limitless ceiling. If they play their cards right there, and I think that Oregon's staff is one of the best staffs in the country. I think that the only thing holding this staff back is Tosh Lupoi. I grade staffs, and I'm done grading all of the staffs for what I think are my top 10 teams, really top 15 teams. And I'm going to get all my staff grades for all the Power 4 teams done before the season kicks off. That'll be especially helpful for previewing 2026 and even going over what's happening in 2025, because I'll be very familiar with even the lower level assistant position coaches. I'll be more familiar with that. I think Oregon is a really good D-line coach. And I think that their position coaches on defense overall are great. I think that they would have a 5 grade. They'd have a 5 score. They'd have a 5 score staff, which in my view, a 5 staff grade means that you have a national title caliber staff. Like you don't have Nick Saban, the head coach, so you'll never have what that entails, but you have close to a Saban level staff. You have close to one of the best, if not the best staff in the country. There are only 2 staffs right now I have graded as 5s. They are Texas and they are Penn State, who are also coincidentally my top 2 teams in college football this year. When I look at Oregon, I think that Tony Tuioti is one of the better defensive line coaches in the country. I think the way he's recruited at a high level is awesome, and Lupoi certainly helps with that. And I think the way Matayo Uiagalelei and Teitum Tuioti have panned out are also a testament to that. And look, Amari Washington, been with the program since high school. He's been retained, and whenever he did play, he looked good. And I believe in Oregon's defensive line as a great defensive line nationally. Its ceiling is elite in being one of the best in college football, but you also have to understand that he mainly asked about ceiling there. So that's kind of where we'll end it off, is the ceiling portion. But also the ceiling could be lower than I expect, because if the floor is as low as it could be if few things are just less than half of the players who are going to have to step up pan out, the floor might be low enough to where it does drag down the ceiling, because I don't think they don't have a player who can pull up the entire unit in such a way to where he masks two bad players or 2 or 3 underperforming players. Uiagalelei's elite. I don't know if he's that generational. A player like Chase Young, for example, at D end, or Aiden Hutchinson can do that. I don't know if Uiagalelei is quite that just yet. Could be for sure. And that's why I think, in part, along with how they've recruited and developed there, I think this D-line ceiling is ultimately limitless. This could be a top 5 D-line in football. Certainly will be one of the better D-lines in the Big Ten, for sure. I'm very high on Uiagalelei, very high on Teitum Tuioti. I love Amari Washington. Questions about Bear Alexander and about the depth more so. The ceiling is high. It is. It could be lower than I think, however, because they do have questions at depth. They do lose both NFL defensive tackles they had last year. And especially if an injury occurs, the ceiling of this unit will probably collapse if there's an injury to one of the starters long term, because of how young the position group is. In 2026, this unit's going to be insane based on how they've recruited and the depth chart they have.